I have lived in my neighborhood for 6 years. I run daily and walk the dog daily when it's not dash 45C out, but since it's a newer area, there aren't many paths. So I take basically the same sidewalks every single day. About 4 years ago, I noticed there'd always be a pile of crap on the sidewalk behind a specific home. We're talking a basketball, pair of shoes, half of some plastic toy, an umbrella, etc. Really random groupings of everyday life detritus, always on the sidewalk, always behind this house. I have a short dog, and also I am aware enough of the world that I know this stuff can affect, say, a mother with a stroller or someone in a wheelchair trying to navigate around it. So when I'd come across it, I'd always move it onto the grass because I didn't really know where it was coming from. Eventually, I'd see it get reported as litter on our local complaints app, and the city would clean it up, and that was that. Once or twice, I took a garbage bag myself and threw it out. This happened for years. I had to make a Facebook account for a job I took, and idly decided to join my local neighborhood Facebook group. Scrolling back to read the drama, I came across a complaint about that house. Someone commented, "Try being their neighbor. It's like living by a dump." By scouring the comments, I found out these kids just do this constantly. The parents don't care and have been talked to by the city and the neighbors, and the color of the house of the culprits, confirming which house it was. The kids just thought this was fun. So I decided, why not just throw everything back in? I began doing this in 2021. Shoe? In their yard. Gatorade bottle? Yard. Do poupe? Yard. One time a whole Barbie was out there. I picked it up. Chucked it. See, the kids were never out when I was out, so no one really saw me throw it back in. One time we threw the same shoe back and forth 6 times. 6 runs, I saw that damn glitter Velcro shoe. 6 times, I tossed it back over their fence. This whole thing baffled me because I can't imagine the parents understood where all their shit was going. I saw a whole raincoat, big toys, adult sneakers. Like, these children were taking stuff from the house to do this. It always slowed down in the winter, but once the snow melted, it came back. One day I went for my run and one of those plastic tricycles was there. Something in me snapped. I moved it to the side and left it there. I ignored it for a few days. Then I went for a walk with my dog, and I heard the kids in the yard. I picked that sucker up, stepped far back, and with all my might, wailed that shit into their yard. I heard a shriek and the sound of breaking, and then silence. Then I walked up to the fence and said, "I better not see any of your garbage on this sidewalk ever again," and then kept walking with my dog. 'Cause really, what were the kids gonna do? The fence was higher than they were. It was not gated nor close to a walking path. So if they wanted to see me, they'd have to go down 6 houses to come out to the path I was on. Their parents clearly didn't give a fuck. This was fall 2022. I'm happy to report I haven't seen a single piece of garbage behind their house since. And yes, they still live there. Their artwork is still proudly displayed in the windows. Comment. I had a neighbor in Colorado who kept throwing stuff over our shared fence into my backyard to fuck with my 2 dogs. She would wait until 8 to 9 a.m. when we let them out in the mornings to open her back door, make a lot of noise to get the dogs barking, and then start recording it. After a couple shitty letters from her, "Your dogs are barking at 10 in the morning. This is unacceptable." She started throwing broken glass, chicken and pork bones, nails, etc. into the yard. I cleaned that shit up for weeks, and one day I snapped because my wife took the dogs to the park, and I went out back to clean up the lady's mess, and she jumps out onto her back porch, starts yelling and talking really loudly, "See, this is the house with the dogs. I can get them to bark, watch." And she's just throwing stuff at and against the fence. I grabbed up the dog shit can we had and just dumped all the shit, nails, broken glass, and everything back over the fence and told her to get fucked. She still complained about the barking, but didn't throw shit over the fence anymore. Her dogs got out one time and we just dropped them off at the local Humane Society. Turns out we weren't the first people she did this to, and we weren't the first to drop her dogs off at the shelter. She ended up paying something like $800 to get her dogs back. Comment. We have a neighbor who put his non-bin, monthly county pickup garbage across the road on our property. It's supposed to be big stuff like appliances and such, but he did HVAC work and he'd leave that and just household garbage there. This part of our property we don't mow. It's a wooded area. We didn't have a problem with it except one. The county uses those big scoops to pick it up, which leaves the area bumpy/little ditches and too. What the county didn't pick up: paper, insulation, little pieces of garbage. The neighbors just left there to blow all over our yard. Neighbor thought right of way meant he could do whatever. Husband finally had enough and told him if right of way meant he could put stuff on our property, then husband could put our garbage on his right of way. Now neighbor puts his garbage on the other neighbor's property. Comment: that's not the ending I was hoping for. You should talk to that neighbor and band together against that asshole. I'm also not sure he is legally allowed to just throw his garbage on others' properties. If you make enough noise about it, the city will most likely fine him. Comment: one time in New Orleans' lower Ninth Ward, I was doing property cleanup about a year post-Hurricane Katrina. I was using a push bush hogging mower used for big thick brush. Was cleaning next to a property that was getting rebuilt. I was working in thick growth and it was hot as hell and it started to stink something fierce. Soon I realized I was mowing over countless bags of hot, fresh human shit. All the workers from the construction site next door were shitting in bags and tossing them into the dilapidated, overgrown property next door that I was tasked to clean up. It was fun untangling all that poop-smeared plastic out of my mower blades. Comment: I don't have anything to add about trash or petty revenge, but I was in the lower ninth with my army unit within 36 hours of cat making landfall. We stayed in the backyard of a house on Carrollton, which was owned by the church next door. No power, no water, no creature comforts whatsoever. We lived in that backyard for a month, while conducting 2 hours patrols every 8 hours, for rotation teams, on a 24-hour schedule, to catch looters busting into abandoned homes. Despite only being on the ground for 30 days, I've got enough wild and bizarre stories for a lifetime. It was truly a dystopian experience that I will never forget. I made it back there about 6 years later. Wife and I were leaving out of NOLA for a cruise, and I decided to take her over where we patrolled. Hadn't changed one bit. Comment: a friend of mine learned a hard lesson as a child living in Ventura, California. Growing up with 2 Dobermans in the family, he was tasked with poop duty. For over a year, he would pitch the turds over the back fence into the neighboring orchard. One fine day, he came home from school and was informed by his mother that there was a project that required his attention in the backyard. Apparently, the farmer who owned the property was disgruntled by the accumulation of feces and used his tractor to dump the pile back over the fence. Comment: now, I am not a person to trifle with. I don't make threats. If I say I will do something, then that is exactly what I will do. You have to really push me to get to this point, but once you do, there is no turning back. And this is a small community that I have lived in for most of my life. Over the many years I have lived in my house, I would find garbage in my backpack, clearly thrown across my 6-foot vinyl privacy fence from the apartment complex behind me. This happened all year round. Mostly just empty beer cans and fast food containers. I would routinely just throw them back over the fence. Then during COVID, a different kind of garbage started appearing. Bags of cat shit. After a few weeks of this, I finally had enough. I took the bag of cat shit and hand-delivered it to the manager of the apartment complex. I told her of all the trash that had been thrown over my fence over the years from her tenants and that this was the end of the line. I told her that from now on, every single time any type of garbage was thrown over my fence, I was going to call the village and our village police to make a complaint, and then I was going to dump it on her doorstep. I told her to avoid that she better find which tenants are the culprits and make sure they know there will be consequences if they continue this behavior. She was pretty sure she knew who it was. She speculated the teenager kid whose parent told him to take the cat poop to the apartment complex's trash dumpsters, which was at the opposite end of their apartment. Apparently was too lazy and my yard was closer. Needless to say, there has been 0 garbage thrown across my fence since that day. Comment: my husband and I have been the farmer in this scenario, except that instead of an orchard, it was public parks and bike paths. In a natural area of a city park, the neighbor was hauling all of the horse manure out of their barn and dumping it in a big pile. I sent a picture to the park manager and the neighbor had to go clean up the giant pile of manure and was fined for littering. One yard was divided into different areas for their kids and dogs. They tossed all of the dog poop into the bike path, so my husband took our poop scooper and tossed it all back into the kids' playset. Comment. I used to work for a charity with urban nature reserves, and we often dealt with this type of problem. One particular neighbor threw random rubbish over his back fence into our reserve. He had a little boy who could see us through the fence. I was stood by his pile of rubbish, putting it into a bag, and picked up a broken toy, tractor or truck type thing, and the little boy said, "That's mine." Still wasn't anything we could do about it, though. Even with an address in fly-tipped waste, the people had to admit to it, as their address in it wasn't quite enough evidence to give them a fine, and the council is so underfunded that it doesn't have time or resources to follow everything up. Comment. Awesome. My dad did something similar to us. He would tell us to pick up our stuff out of the yard so he could mow that afternoon. We put it off as kids do, then promptly forgot. He'd be pissed. He'd pick everything up. Repeat next week. Next week, we were told. But we were idiots. Dad mowed our stuff into little confetti pieces, then sat out there and made us pick up each little piece of debris. He never had to ask again. If we even heard the neighbors start a mower, we frantically combed the yard for anything. Comment. As a mom with a young one who goes on walks with a stroller, I am living vicariously through you with this LOL. I love my neighborhood, but there's always people chatting in the middle of the sidewalk, which means I have to finagle my way around them. Sometimes my daughter is asleep in the stroller, so it makes having to recline the stroller back a bit to smoothly go over the curb/driveway a surefire way to wake her up. Or lately, I just stop and stare. Just today, while walking with my daughter, a house with two other young kids had their bikes, chalk and toys in the middle of the sidewalk. I always thought it was just me being petty, but happy to see I'm not alone. Comment. If people are blocking the sidewalk and I'm trying to get by, usually I'll politely say, "Excuse me, please," and keep going, and they move to the side. But sometimes I'll stand and wait for them to move. I don't glare at them or say anything. I just stand quietly until they realize they're in the way. After a minute or two, they always figure it out and move with a mumbled apology. And that's without a stroller with a baby in it. Comment. My neighbors have 6 children and a studious commitment to not parenting any of them. These kids throw anything and everything over the fence into our yard. Toys, clothing, food, random kitchen utensils, you name it, we got it. This happens multiple times every day. For several years, we tossed everything back. Then, in one day, they destroyed a flower bed with a large toy and hit me with a rock. That was the last straw. I told the kids that anything else that came over the fence was going in the garbage, and I've been true to my word. I've thrown out everything from cheap plastic toys to brand new shoes and remote-controlled cars, as well as a couple of decorative throw pillows. The flood has definitely slowed down as they've figured out that I'm serious, but hasn't stopped. I wonder if the parents, whom I've also spoken to, their attitude is "kids will be kids," have made the connection. Please leave your story in the comments. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe to get new update. Thank you.